Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5-Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Yo, what's happening, Rush Nation? Welcome to, I don't know, where are we? A week, 10, no, less than 10 days, 8 days, 7 days. My guest will tell me inevitably in a moment. Welcome to the Flagship show. It's Thursday. If you are watching on the video, you'll see that Murph isn't here. He is away getting a second break in this full-time holidays because he works very hard and he deserves it. So Murph, please don't be watching. Enjoy yourself. I've got this for one night. And I thought, who better to bring back than one of the old hosts of the Dynasty Show, I guess the founder of the Dynasty Show, a good friend of mine, the oracle for Dynasty football in my eyes, co-owner of the FF Sanctuary. It's Rich Cooling. Rich, welcome back. It's been a hot minute. How are you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on. Always amazing to jump on, go back to my roots. Yeah, very, very excited. We're 7 days away from the start of the NFL season. So yeah, very much looking forward to it, Countdown days.
7 days. It's crept up. I guess maybe not for you because you have been buried within thousands and thousands of tons of fantasy soil. But for me, it felt like the off season went really quick, slowly. But all of a sudden, we are 7 days away from actual football and fantasy football, which is, come on, for the next 16, 17 weeks, the most important bit about the NFL. How has it gone for you, the off season and the preseason, and has it been slow? Has it been fast? How have you found it?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird one. I think the rookie season, I sort of January, February, March, I sort of disappear into a rookie black hole, write my rookie guide and sort of reappear around the NFL draft, and then I sort of took a couple of weeks off at the beginning of May. And it was like, right, okay, let's sort of get into off-season mode, start planning things out, starting this content. And then it was like, oh, it's August, right? We're into redraft season. All of a sudden, it's like I didn't really have a dynasty period as such. And yeah, this month has just gone so fast. It feels like as soon as preseason started, it's finished and we're good to go almost. It's absolutely bonkers how quickly it's gone.
Yeah, I was worried about who the actual Broncos starting quarterback was going to be. I hoped it would be Bo after what we invested in the draft, but then Jarrett Stidham was knocking about. Obviously, Zach Wilson was there, and everybody was hoping and praying that he wasn't going to be the starter, even though he did have a good game in preseason. And then all of a sudden, the Broncos are 4-0 in preseason. We've looked okay at times. Bo Nix is the starter, and it's gone from 0 to a million miles an hour really quickly. And I'm actually low-key excited about the season in a completely different way I was last year, because we had Russell Wilson and it was going to be brilliant. And then it wasn't as it went. And I do feel for Pittsburgh, but we'll talk about that in a little bit, Rich. I do think, I want to get your thoughts actually, because on the Tim Patrick release from the Broncos actually being traded to Detroit, him and Courtland Sutton, it feels to me a little bit like this was going to be not the Sutton and Judy hype, because that was going to be huge and that never transpired. But Tim Patrick's been a stalwart at Denver now for a few years. Yes, he's been injured, but we've seen flashes of brilliance from him. Courtland Sutton has been good throughout his career whilst having to deal with lots of other problems. He's never been elite, but he's been good enough to be the wide receiver one in the Broncos wide receiver room. And then to me, it felt like it was going to be the Sutton and Patrick show was going to be when Bradley Chubb and Von Miller were going to be these absolutely explosive, linebackers that were going to clear house. And then that never really happened. They never really played together properly. And then Patrick gets traded, and all of a sudden it is the youth movement at Denver. We have a very, very young team, and it is as if Sean Payton has decided this is the way we're going. And even though Tim Patrick's looked good, we're going to showcase him in a preseason game, and then we're going to ship him. Two questions. Do you think that's a mistake from Denver's point? And then secondly, do you think there is any value in Tim Patrick as a really deep sleeperish ad pick, however you're playing your fantasy football at the moment?
So I think first of all, I feel slightly attacked that you bring up, Tim Patrick is a deep love of mine, has been for about 4 years. I've been calling the Tim Patrick breakout only for him to consistently get injured. But I was one of these that I was fully bought in on Tim Patrick. We'd seen all off season Sean Payton going on about how much size is important at wide receiver and how that's such an important skill and you can't teach it. And I was thinking Tim Patrick's getting moved all around. I was getting excited like this could be Michael Thomas. We've seen time and time again. Sean Payton in New Orleans had made absolute fantasy gold out of unheralded players. You think back to Marcus Colston being a 7th round pick. Was he a tight end? Was he a wide receiver coming out? And then all of a sudden he was, a wide receiver 1 within his first 2 years and an absolute fantasy superstar out of nowhere. And I was thinking, this is it. Tim Patrick's going to be it. He's finally going to break out. He was playing through all preseason with the ones. It appeared that he was doing fantastically. We saw Troy Franklin, we saw Marvin Mims buried down the depth charts. And then all of a sudden, this news breaks that the Broncos are going to release him if they can't trade him. And I was like, what? Where's this come from? It was gobsmacking. So, yeah, I think sadly for Tim Patrick, and he's gone to a good situation, I think, in Detroit, where outside of Amon St. Brown, Sam Laporta, I don't believe in any of those wide receivers. So yeah, if there's a depth chart he's going to be able to carve a role out in, it's in Detroit. But we can't really be too excited about a guy that's just been shipped off for nothing. So yeah, I think it's wild. I don't quite understand Ian's logic in terms of bigging up this guy. If it was maybe motivation to give Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin a kick up the backside, but I have no idea with Marvin Mims. We saw, Sean Payton traded up to get him. That was his first ever draft pick with the Broncos.
Yep.
He then basically does nothing last year. He then treats him like a leper throughout the entire preseason.
So are
we now expecting him to be like, the vertical slot that has been absolute money for Sean Payton throughout his career? You think of Brandon Cooks, Rashid Shaheed, Lance Moore, all those guys have been phenomenal for Sean Payton. Is Marvin Mims going to be that next guy?
So I listen to Locked On Broncos every day, and if you are a fan of a specific team, the Locked On, I don't know about all 32 teams, but I know that the Denver one, and we actually had the host on the podcast a few years ago, the Denver one is pretty good. And he seems to think, his name has absolutely escaped me, so I apologize. But he seems to think that perhaps the Marvin Mims, we haven't seen him returning anything because he is the lock to be the returner. So they've been trying other people out to see if there is any option there. And we haven't seen him as a wide receiver because they're almost trying to hide him from view at the moment because they wanted to get Patrick out to be showcased because of the potential to trade him. Cortland Sutton is Cortland Sutton. And word on the street is that Troy Franklin is essentially going to potentially be redshirted for this first year, which I don't understand. You go and get Bo Nix, his best mate from Oregon, and then
I think it makes sense. I think he needs some time in an NFL weight room. I think I believe in him as a prospect. I believe in his route running ability, but there are elements, more nuanced elements of the wide receiver position that I think he still needs some time to develop. And I do believe he is quite raw. So I'm never a fan of letting wide receivers develop because I don't think it's particularly a great position that, we don't see many 3rd, 4th, 5th year breakouts for that reason. So I kind of don't love the idea of redshirt in a wide receiver, but if you're going to do it to anyone, I kind of think Troy Franklin makes some sense if I'm talking logic.
No, that's fair. I appreciate the input because it validates the other point that I heard. So rather than me thinking it was just a bad move, maybe potentially it's a good one. And then Marvin Mims, hopefully we've just been hiding him and eventually he comes out and just goes ham this season because, like you say, there's been some previous with Sean Payton and that type of receiver. Well, let's stay with Denver then because it's my show. I can do what I want. With Samaje obviously going and being released, Do you think this is actually? I don't want to say Javonte's season because I don't want to knock on wood or whatever. But do you think this is potentially the season for Javonte to have his best season yet? That yes, we've got Audric Estime, who was a bulldozer, and
Jaleel McLaughlin.
He's the speedster of the three. Do you think this is the time for Javonte to go out and be a 3-down back in most situations?
No. I've never been a big Javonte fan, so yeah, perhaps I'm slightly skewed, but I just think Jaleel McLaughlin, if you look at his underlying numbers, you look at his target per route run numbers, you look at his yards per route run numbers, you look at his usage when he's been on the field and how Sean Payton talks about him, I think Jaleel McLaughlin is going to be a big part of this backfield. I think the reason they let Samaje Perine go was because Jaleel McLaughlin showed in the preseason that he can hold up in pass protection, which I think is a massive thing. And I think that the fact that he's now competent in pass protection and is an elite satellite back out of the backfield, that immediately caps Javonte Williams' receiving upside. So are we going to be just a first and second down back? That's not a player that I particularly love in fantasy, and I think the cost and the upside isn't amazing. You then add in the fact that I was a big fan of Audric Estime. I think, you know, if he didn't run a 40, I think he'd have been drafted 2 rounds earlier in the NFL draft. And I think that this is a guy that, again, the Broncos are going to want to try and get on the field and potentially get some usage out of, which further caps Javonte Williams' ceiling. So I think we've seen Sean Payton doesn't traditionally like to just have one guy see, 80% of the work. He likes to spread it around. He likes to have that satellite back. We know that, Sean Payton offenses check the ball down to running backs an obscene amount. I think if you go and watch, I think it's 7 of the top 15 target shares to running backs in NFL history are Sean Payton offenses. So we know that Sean Payton likes to get the running backs involved in the passing game. Bo Nix, obscenely low ADOT in his career at Oregon. And 70% of his passing attempts through preseason have been less than 10 yards downfield. So I'm expecting this offense to have a huge amount of Jaleel McLaughlin check down, Jaleel McLaughlin screens and kind of manufactured touches. So I think for me, Javonte Williams, he'll probably be that sort of volume-based RB2 that will just plug along, play 17 games. At the end of the season, finishes as RB22, and you're like, oh, Javonte Williams had a good year. And it's like, actually, if every week you started him, you probably lost because he was giving you basically replacement level production.
I'm just trying to think whether I've just drafted him or not, and now I'm hoping I haven't. I'm in a draft at the moment, and it doesn't feel like I'm going to get done.
I'm in a couple of them. Yeah, I started a redraft league. There's a couple of our members were saying, oh, their kids wanted to kind of play in their first league, and I was like, well, look, I'll commission one, and we'll sort of have a fun league, get involved. So we've got like 4 or 5, I think, under 14s playing in it.
Nice.
But two are in Australia, 2 are in the UK. I think 3 in the UK, 1's in France. It's just like we're in round 3, and I'm conscious that the season starts in 7 days. It's like we might not get this one finished. We're averaging about a pick every 2 hours, but yeah, it should be good fun.
Oh man, that is that could be trouble. I've got a few other. Well, we talked about the Steelers. Obviously, Russell Wilson came out when it was announced that he was the starter on Sleeper, and I got notification. It said Pittsburgh, let's ride. And I don't know whether that is that correct anymore now that he's not playing for the Broncos and them being horses. It felt weird to me.
I'm sure. So it's a fascinating story. I don't know if you've ever dove into it, but I'm going to butcher all the analysis, so bear with me. But there was basically Russell Wilson had this sports psychologist that taught him a load of stuff and sounds like an absolutely phenomenal man. But he talked about basically resetting your brain and having verbal statements to reset your brain. And his Broncos Let's Ride was that verbal statement to kind of reset.
Right.
And the guy passed away last year, and it's quite a sad story. But that's why he did that "let's ride" stuff and kept saying it over and over again, because it was like his verbal, I guess, mindset trick thing. So I'm sure he will have one again with the Steelers. What it'll be? Let's hammer. Does that work? Like what does a Steeler do? Like let's carry heavy steel. Like it doesn't quite roll off the tongue, does it?
No. Yeah, when I saw it, it just looked weird, as if Sleeper hadn't really done their homework and they just carried on from last season. Because didn't he have one at Seattle as well, where he used to say at the end of his?
I think it was "Go Hawks," wasn't it? Or
yeah,
something?
Go Hawks.
Yeah.
Let's ride. Any Steelers fan listening, please come into the comments and let us know what you think Russell Wilson's new catch line should be. But do George Pickens' ADP right now seems incredibly low in redraft, considering he is going to be the number one there, right, as a wide receiver.
Like, yes, I think this is an interesting one, because obviously my co-host Tom has been a big anti-George Pickens person all off season, and I kind of get it. Like, if you look at it, George Pickens is a perfect fit for an Arthur Smith offense, in terms of Arthur Smith likes big-bodied receivers that are good on in-breaking routes that can win over the middle. George Pickens, through his career, has been utilized as an outside kind of go ball specialist, contested catch monster, but actually at his best at Georgia and at his best, I think, in the NFL, is on those in-breaking routes. So it's like perfect. This is a guy that we're going to not necessarily take into a huge target role. You think of A.J. Brown with the Titans under Arthur Smith. You know, he was putting up great fantasy seasons, only seeing fringe 100 targets in a season. George Pickens could be, you know, a wide receiver 2 on that 100 targets. The problem is that, okay, that's George Pickens and Arthur Smith. We can say, right, they're going to be in-breaking, contested catches over the middle. Let's get him yards after the catch. The problem is Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are two of the worst throwers the NFL has ever seen between the hashes. They both want to push the ball outside the numbers. And it's like, this marriage doesn't work. Like, Arthur Smith and the quarterbacks don't fit in terms of the passing game. In terms of the run game, fantastic. But in terms of the passing game, it doesn't work. And it's like, George Pickens, is he going to be a contested catch outside numbers guys like the quarterbacks want him to be, or is he going to be this in-breaking guy? So I don't get it. I think I like him better than Tom. Tom's basically out on him at cost. I think that there is a world where he could be a little bit boom bust. I think in best ball, I think he's going to have spike weeks. I think this offense is potentially going to be better than most people think and realize. So I can kind of get it in best ball, but in redraft, I just can't be starting him each week, because I think there's going to be weeks where he's going to put up 3 targets, 1 catch for 4 yards and absolutely kill you. And yeah, there'll probably be, 7 targets, 6 catches, 150 yards, 2 touchdown weeks, and he can win you a week. But those weeks where he's costing you a week, I just can't live with that. So I think for me, I'm looking at more than just, is he the wide receiver 1 on an offense? Because realistically, this is probably going to be one of the lowest passing volume offenses in the league. I think there's enough options in terms of, I think Jaylen Warren's fantastic out the backfield. We know Russell Wilson checks the ball down unlike anyone else in the league. So I think that's going to be a large amount of target volume. We know Arthur Smith loves his tight ends, and it looks like this is going to be a 4 tight end room, and there's going to be plenty in there. So yeah, I think George Pickens is going to be the wide receiver 1 in Pittsburgh. He's going to have some good weeks, but personally, I can't get on board with him in redraft at cost. I think if he starts to fall, if you can get him as a flex play, something like that, where you're not having to rely on him every week, great. But if you're looking at him being a weekly starter, I think you're setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah, I mean, I think at current ADP, he's going to be sort of my 3rd or 4th receiver. So I'm not bothered grabbing him there, if, as you say, as a flex play. But what I've learned from the first 19 minutes, Rich, is I think everybody on my sort of winners from preseason list should probably be on my losers. So I'm going to pick somebody off of my losers preseason list now and see if you think they're a winner, just to see if this calculation is completely right. We'll stay in Pittsburgh, like you said, with the 4 tight ends. Do you think Pat Frymouth is a concern with his usage in preseason, or do you think we're just ironing out some kinks before we get to the season?
No, I'm seriously concerned. I feel like I've gone full circle with Pat Frymouth this offseason. I was kind of a fade to begin the season. I wasn't a massive fan. It sort of felt like a bit of a kind of a replacement level talent, shall we say?
Yep.
And then I looked into it and I was like, actually, the way Arthur Smith uses tight ends in terms of the target volume to the position, Pat Frymouth, you look at kind of underlying numbers and stuff like that, and it's like, actually, Pat Frymouth looks fantastic. He's a great value at cost. And then the preseason starts, and it's like, oh yeah, Arthur Smith's tight ends score a lot of points, but it's not the tight end you think it is.
Yeah.
It's the tight end room scores a lot of points, but I think we're going to see a lot of Pat Frymouth. We're going to see an awful lot of Darnell Washington. We're going to see Arthur Smith's guy, Michael Pruitt. There's even Connor Hayward thrown in there. So, yeah, look, I feel like Pat Frymouth's going to have some good weeks, but this is a guy that's probably going to get taken off the field in obvious rundowns. If they then go hurry up and kind of move quick, he's going to stay off the field. It worries me because I think we basically have seen Arthur Smith time and time again use a tight end rotation rather than just use one guy. And I think that we're going to see Pat Frymouth probably not used in things like 12 personnel and stuff like that, which means he's going to be off the field on those kind of key play action plays, essentially. And it does make me nervous.
Good. That makes me feel a little bit better that one of my list is not completely terrible. Okay, let's move to another receiver that you are going to absolutely hate. And I think Terry McLaurin has the potential to get 130 targets this year. And whilst not be a starter wide receiver, I think you could plug him in for a flex, even though Jaden Daniels is probably going to rush for 1,000 yards and not find Terry McLaurin within 100 targets. I like the ceiling because of Jahan Dotson not being there anymore. I think there is a potential for Terry McLaurin to have his best year yet. I'm not saying it's going to be a good year. I just think Terry McLaurin could have his best year.
Well, I feel like I'm going to shock you here, Stocks. I've been a noted Terry McLaurin doubter, shall we say, through his career. I think I love the talent. I love the player. I just think the issue is that he has been consistently overvalued and overhyped. I think people have talked about him as a kind of high-end wide receiver 2, back-end wide receiver 1, both in redraft and dynasty, and he's kind of been that back-end wide receiver 2 type throughout his career. But I feel like his value is absolutely obscene at the moment. I feel like he's massively undervalued. I think that we've seen Cliff Kingsbury offenses force feed the ball to specific targets. We know that it's Cliff Kingsbury's going to have one of those higher paced, pass heavy offenses, which is dynamite for fantasy. We're going to see a relatively quick time per play and stuff like that. And I think that Jaden Daniels has shown through the preseason, he's happy to force the ball into tight windows. He's happy to take risks. Terry McLaurin's going to be good there. This wide receiver room is absolutely abysmal outside of Terry McLaurin. And I think Washington know that. You look at, how they've been talking. You listen to Dan Quinn talk before they traded Jahan Dotson. It's like, yeah, Terry's good. We have no idea outside of that. They've got Diami Brown, who, look, people can pretend Diami Brown's going to happen, but we've been talking about it for 4 years now. Mm-hmm. They traded away Jahan Dotson, who wasn't showing anything. They've got I get his name wrong every time, Olamide Zaccheaus, who's potentially going to play out the slot. They've got Luke McCaffrey, who, had some decent traits, but was overdrafted by them in the 3rd round and has yet to carve out a starting role despite this wide receiver core being absolutely decimated. And it's like, who else are they throwing the ball to? Okay, maybe we're going to get Zach Ertz in his, nth season, finally commanding high target volumes. Maybe Ben Sinnott is going to be the tight end people dream of. But I think, to me, Ben Sinnott is more of like a H-back, fullback type that can run some routes at tight end. I don't think he's a route technician of some of the other rookies that have come out at the tight end position recently and produced. So it's like, I don't love this offense. I'm not a big Jaden Daniels believer. But, I think Terry McLaurin right now is ridiculously undervalued. I did a redraft league, my home league, a couple of nights ago. I say a couple of nights ago. It was last night. And I'm trying to load it up now. But I think I got him as my wide receiver 5.
What?
Having gone Christian McCaffrey in the first round and then hammer in. So I went Christian McCaffrey, Drake London, Chris Olave, Devonta Smith, Zay Flowers, and I got Terry McLaurin as my wide receiver 5 in the 6th round.
Okay. Is it super flex?
No, it's 1QB, PPR, as standard as it comes. It's as I said, I think he's criminally undervalued. I got him at the 6'11".
Right. Rich, I want you to rate this team that is currently drafting. Okay. I'm drafting from the 10 spot.
Okay.
Right. I started with CD Lamb.
Okay, but hang on. This one is back. What are the settings? Because the fact you've got CD Lamb 110, I'm hoping it's Superflex.
It is Superflex.
Okay.
And this isn't a league of mugs either. There's a few sharps in here, one of which being Murph. So I'm hoping you're not listening right now, Murph, because I'm about to ask for some tips. I started Lamb, then I got Jamar Chase at the 2-3. I want to confess, this is a home league. I didn't realise it was Superflex until the 5th round.
Smooth.
But as you all know, Rush Nation and Rich, I'm sure you remember, I don't do quarterbacks early, even if it's Superflex.
Always.
Most of the time it is to my detriment. And then I thought, I'm going to take some players I don't own. So I went I went Pacheco in the 3rd, Kenneth Walker in the 4th, and then thought, better get myself a quarterback. So I then went back-to-back quarterbacks. I've gone Watson, Levis as my 2 quarterbacks because by then there wasn't a great deal left. I then took Tony Pollard in the 7th at 7-10, and then I got Terry McLaurin as my 3rd receiver at 8-3.
Okay, that's ridiculous. Look, I think if you're playing fantasy, you've got to, I always say this to people, what's your aim when you're drafting? Is your aim to win the league or is your aim to just make the playoffs? And I think that's for some people, making the playoffs is a great victory and fair play to you. But I'm looking to win. It's small percentage chances. We're talking 8% chance you win the league. And I think that team is about as high leverage boom bust as you can come. Jamar Chase, CD Lamb. We know if both of those are firing, they've potentially got wide receiver 1 upside. Kenneth Walker, I think Pacheco's taken a bit of a hit with them signing Samaje Perine, but they've both got decent ceilings. Deshaun Watson, Will Levis, look, they could give you absolutely nothing, and you could be looking for a QB1 in week 2. But if Deshaun Watson ever rekindles anything resembling Houston Texans Deshaun Watson, okay, it was like 4 years ago, but if we can get back to that, that's a great pick. Will Levis, I've been higher on Will Levis all off season. I think that when a team puts that sort of weapons around you, I think he's further along as a progressor, kind of mental quarterback than people give him credit for. And I think he's got the arm and the willingness to run. I'm not going to say rushing talent because I'm not sure he's got a huge amount of it, but he's willing. He's trying to truck defenders for a touchdown in preseason games. Let's wait to see what he does when the NFL gets going. Yeah, I think it's got incredibly high upside, and I love that pick of Terry McLaurin in the 8th. That's fantastic value. So I'd want a 3rd quarterback. I'll be honest. I'd want maybe someone a little bit safer. I don't know who else is going to be on the board if we're 8 rounds into a super flex. Is probably someone like Drake May or Bo Nix maybe still floating around. But
see, my plan was to wait for Bo to come back in the 9th and then smash Bo Nix and just go, if it's going to happen, I'm going to be on the side that's going to have it when it happens. And if it doesn't, he was my 3rd quarterback. His bye weeks work out. There isn't really anybody left. Gino's there, Bryce Young, Derek Carr.
Whoa. Gino's still there.
Yeah.
That's an absolute smash. That is unbelievable value.
Well, no, saying that he's probably... Oh, no, I'll tell you the reason he's still there, because he's got the same bye week as Deshaun Watson. So I could...
Don't worry about bye week stocks. Just play one quarterback that week. It's fine. And be in a better position for the other 16 weeks of the season.
Yeah. I've got Geno Smith as my quarterback 1 in a dynasty league. And I thought this was my league to take players where didn't have people. So
okay, all right. Well, you do you. Absolutely. I think that's the key thing with fantasy is look, I get asked so many times, what would you do here? What would you do here? And I'll always give my advice. I'll always offer my opinion. But the main thing is that the important and the reason we all play fantasy is to have fun. And the way you have fun is you draft the guys that you want to draft and you cheer for the guys that you want to cheer for. And yeah, I think Geno Smith is a screaming value there. But if you've got a share and you want to spread it out, absolutely makes perfect sense going elsewhere.
I think for me, the fun in Superflex is seeing just how late I can leave it before that third quarterback disappears.
Quarterback chicken is great fun. I try and do it in every charity league that I'm in every year.
I knew I started selling a few years ago. It just never really caught on. All right, we've mentioned Kenneth Walker. What's your view on him this season with Zach Charbonnet looking more like a really cheap white wine in a corner shop than an actual decent bottle? What's your take on Kenneth Walker?
I still don't get it because I think that there is a lot of talent there. He is phenomenal. When he, cuts a play back, goes against the grain and takes it for 40 yards, it's phenomenal to watch. But I just can't get my head around how NFL coaches, how kind of risk averse they are, how they just want to run the ball to pick up 4 yards to get him in 2nd and 6 and manageable situations. Why we keep seeing Kenneth Walker, who is, 2 yards, 2 yards, 1 yard, minus 2 yards, 50 yards. I don't get why NFL coaches love that so much. And maybe it's because we're just always chasing explosive plays and that's what Kenneth Walker is. But to me, Zach Charbonnet is better in terms of run after contact. He's better in terms of missed tackle forced. He's better efficient-wise. He's better in terms of pure success rate. Yet it seems like even a new regime is still infatuated by Kenneth Walker. So I'm a big Charbonnet believer. I think that he's the more reliable running back. And I keep telling myself, look, this is a defense-first team again in Seattle. They're going to want the guy that they know what they're going to get rather than the question mark of Kenneth Walker. But it's looking like through the preseason, this is Kenneth Walker's job again, and Zach Charbonnet is just going to sit there as a really expensive handcuff, quite frankly. So yeah, maybe my thought process, my analysis is I'm just getting it completely wrong, and I'm completely different to how Seattle's, seeing it. And let's be honest, that's probably why they're getting paid millions of dollars to be NFL coaches. And I'm sitting at home talking to you, quite frankly, Stocks. But
thank you very much. What an endorsement.
Yeah. But yeah, I think there's a time where you just have to say, yeah, Kenneth Walker's clearly the guy. I think he's incredibly talented. And let's be honest, if you were saying, right, I need to score a 60-yard touchdown on this play, how many players would you pick ahead of him in the NFL? It's probably Saquon Barkley and then him, isn't it? In terms of that pure explosiveness can turn something out of nothing. I think those are probably the top two. But if you were saying my life's on the line, I must get 3 yards on this carry, Kenneth Walker's probably bottom of the list. So I think I've spoken a lot there, and I'm not sure what I've said, to be honest, Stocks. But to me, he feels expensive.
Okay, no, that's fair. Expensive. How do you feel about Rashee Rice right now?
I've been screaming from the rooftops to anyone that will listen, go out and buy, go out and draft, get as much shares, as many options of him as you can, because he's being valued in Dynasty as if he's missing the entire season, in redraft best ball as if he was missing, 8 games. His value has been so wrong all off season. And we've seen it. He's jumped. He was going in the 70s on DraftKings 4 months ago. He's now up in like the 30s, 40s and underdog and stuff like that. Like his valuation has been so wrong all off season. And now people are suddenly realizing, even if he, does get suspended, it's probably going to be back end of the season. He's ridiculously valued. And if you've not got the Rashee Rice shares, you probably missed the bus, I'm afraid.
Do you want to know a really, really sad thing, Rich? Really sad.
Oh, Stocks, don't break my heart.
Rashee Rice went the pick after I took Terry McLaurin.
That's bad. That's bad.
It was
That's
because
good value.
yeah, I would have taken him, but I had a cue set and I was mowing and I couldn't look through. All I had to do was hit my cue, and I hadn't looked to see if he was gone or not. And
let's be happy with Terry McLaurin though. Don't live over things you've missed. Be happy with what you got.
there's a T-shirt in there somewhere or something. Right, you can have either of these, Rich. You can have Jerome Ford and Jonathan Brooks, or you can have Chuba Hubbard and Nick Chubb. Which of those pairings would you like?
I want no part of Nick Chubb. So give me Jerome Ford and Jonathan Brooks.
All right, fair enough. That was my thinking too, because if Nick Chubb doesn't come back, then you've probably got, at the end of the season, you've still got the starter for the Cleveland Browns and Carolina Panthers. So
I think that Jonathan Brooks is being overvalued. I think that because he was the first running back drafted, people are putting him in that elite back tier. And I think people are expecting him to come in and be, we've had a really nice run of Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, these fantastic backs who have come in and hit the ground running, Jamal Gibbs and other guys like that. Jonathan Brooks is a good prospect. He's not an elite prospect. We talk about things like my rookie model. You've got, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. They're both like 95th percentile plus guys. So is Jamal Gibbs. Jonathan Brooks was early 70s. Like, he's a good prospect. He's not an elite prospect. And I think that that's perhaps what people are missing in terms of how they're viewing him. So, yeah, when he comes back, I'm excited for him. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to take over that backfield because I think he's going to, push Chuba Hubbard aside. But if you're expecting Jonathan Brooks to come in and win you the league and be top 12, I'd be concerned because I think, top 24 when he's playing is within his range of outcomes. And there's a chance he could win you a league and be that top 12 back. But I just don't think coming off the ACL, having had no preseason, no ability to learn the NFL because it is a different game, I'm nervous that he's being valued as a superstar and he's kind of just good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. That was basically what I wanted to hear because there's been... Trouble is, I think we get, because he was the first running back off the board, there's the feeling that he has to be good because he's the first running back in fantasy. And it just isn't so. But we all get into we've got to have that first running back, regardless of whether he's got one leg or isn't good. He's the first running back in fantasy, so he's going to be good. And it worries me that mindset is so strong. But let's talk some losers then. There was quite a lot of losers on that list, so we'll flow nicely into the second half of losers. Rich, we mentioned Pat Freiermuth. Do you have, this isn't a loser, but do you have any concern with Gibbs's injury, or are you happy with his status going into week one?
Hamstrings always make me nervous because it's the kind of thing that can linger and can potentially impact you. The way Dan Campbell and the coaching staff is talking, it sounds positive. I follow Coach Speak Index on Twitter, which if you're not following, it's fantastic. He basically breaks down all the NFL coaches when they're talking about injuries, how reliable they are, and has like a scale of 1 to 10 and stuff. And the Lions are generally pretty reliable in terms of that injury reporting stuff. So yeah, hopefully he should be good to go for week one. But I am nervous on him before the injury because I think we're expecting him to be this superstar in an offense where this still David Montgomery is going to take a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
And I think we're expecting him to be incredibly efficient in order to pay off his price. I feel okay with him kind of mid-second round. The problem is that you're probably in one QB leagues, you're probably not getting him there. You'll probably have, if you want Gibbs, you've got to take him back end of the first, if not a little bit before that. So, yeah, I'm nervous about the hamstring injury just because they just have the habit of lingering. So kind of 50-50 on him.
Okay. Another running back, Tajay Spears. Do we think Tony Pollard is going to be the guy there, or is Tajay Spears. Like, there was this thing where Tajay Spears was moving up and Pollard was going to be an insurance and they were going to work off each other. Is Pollard going to be the one and Tajay Spears taking a back seat after what we've seen in preseason?
I mean, I have no idea. I think it's mad in terms of, since I've been following the NFL, which we're now talking, God, it's going to make me feel old, it's about 25 years. It feels like backfields have always been about complementary pieces. You know, you've got your, back to the old adage, your thunder and lightning, and you've got your bigger bodied and you've got your pass catching satellite back. And that's how backfields have always worked. And then this offseason is the first time I can remember where teams have gone, right, we've got this guy we like. We're going to go and add essentially the exact same player to come in and work with him, in terms of, you got the Rams guys in Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. And then you've got Tennessee that's got this Tajay Spears, who's an explosive, you know, guy that works in the passing game, great in the kind of manufactured screen game, that's good in open space. And then they've gone, right, the complement to him is going to be exactly the same guy in Tony Pollard. I like both. I think one of these guys is going to win people leagues because I think he's going to be a great value. I have no idea which one it's going to be. If you had to, you know, put a gun to my head and ask me which one to pick, I'm leaning Tony Pollard, just because it sounds ridiculous, but Tajay Spears was there already. This coaching staff brought in Tony Pollard. They paid him, okay, not massive money, but they paid him. They've gone out and identified him. I think if you look at the numbers, Tony Pollard was, you know, hugely disappointing last year. But if you go away and look at it, he spoke about he didn't recover from the broken leg as quickly as he thought he would. He didn't feel truly himself until, can't remember the exact week, but I think it's like week 11, week 10, week 11, something like that. If you look at his numbers after he says he felt healthy, by PFF rushing grade, he was the number one guy in the league. You know, there's plenty of advanced numbers that he was phenomenal down the stretch. Okay, he didn't put up the fantasy numbers, but a lot of that was because the Cowboys offense was basically CeeDee Lamb and no one else, and CeeDee Lamb was going absolutely nuclear down the stretch. But I think if Tony Pollard can get back to Tony Pollard of 2 years ago, I think this is his backfield and he could be phenomenal. But look, it could be messy. It could be that both of them are running back three types and you know, it doesn't turn into anything. But the contingent upside of if one of these guys gets injured or if one of these guys wins 70% of the backfield, at the cost they're going in drafts, they're absolute league winners.
Okay. Let's talk about somebody who's added 20 pounds this offseason, Keenan Allen. The Chicago Bears have looked good in preseason, but it is preseason. Broncos went 4-0. That might be their only 4 wins of the season. The Broncos, not the Bears. The Bears might get a couple. They might get loads. I don't know. I'm worried about Keenan Allen because Rome Odunze looks good. DJ Moore looks good. Should I be worried? Is Keenan Allen, should he be worrying me?
I think what you've got to take into account is the cost to acquire. I think if we're talking in Dynasty where he sat on your roster, yeah, you're probably disappointed because you're probably getting less out of Keenan Allen this year than you thought you were going to get 6 months ago, or you thought you were going to get when they first traded for him. But if we're talking pure redraft, I think the good thing is that, yeah, I'm a little bit more concerned about Keenan Allen than I was a month ago, but his price has absolutely plummeted in the past month. I think that he is still a phenomenal route runner. I'm not concerned about the weight thing. I think it's overblown. This is a guy that's a proven veteran. He knows how to get himself ready. He knows how to get his body ready. And I think he's going to be fine and healthy and kind of good to go.
Marvelous.
My concern is that we don't often see rookie quarterbacks sustain 2, let alone 3 fantasy relevant weapons. And we're looking at this offense that's got DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze. If we want to talk about Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, like, where's the fantasy points going? And that's what concerns me. It's like, yeah, Caleb Williams could come in and be absolutely phenomenal. He's looked great in the preseason. He's an elite prospect. But expecting a rookie quarterback to carry this volume of fantasy relevant options makes me concerned. So I think Keenan Allen's probably going to outpay his cost, but is he going to potentially be that, you know, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 that we've seen over the past couple of years? I don't think so. I think he's probably going to be a fairly boring wide receiver 3 that you look at and you're like, oh, I don't really want to start Keenan Allen, but he'll get me 10 points. And it's like, yeah, you look at the end of the season, he'll finish as the wide receiver 20, and it's like, oh, Keenan Allen had a good year, but actually you never felt great about starting him any week.
Yeah. What should I sell him for in Dynasty, Rich? What can I get for him?
I think the sad thing is that you're probably selling at the right time right now. The wrong time right now, sorry.
Okay,
I think that his value is at a point where I think you'd struggle to get a second for him. I'd need a second plus. I'd be looking for, can I do Keenan Allen and a third for 2 seconds? I think that's probably about where I'd put his value. Or can you do Keenan Allen and a second for a first? But I don't think you're going to get that at all. I think what you need to do is hold him, hope to have a couple of spike weeks at some point in the season, put back-to-back decent performances, and then go and sell him.
Okay. I don't need him. That's the thing. I've got a really good wide receiver core, and I was hoping to sell him, but I don't need to. Finally, let's talk about a wide receiver that Murph and I have been high on, has had a quiet preseason. Michael Pittman Jr., should we be concerned about him going into the season with how quiet his preseason has been?
I think it's all relative, isn't it? Because it depends what you're expecting. Because I think if you're sitting here thinking Michael Pittman's going to put up fringe wide receiver 1 numbers, then yeah, I'd be alarmed. If you're thinking that he could be in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 territory, I'm okay with it. I think that we know that Shane Steichen's going to call a great offense. We know that the Colts are going to be among the most heavy RPO schemed offenses in the entire league. We know that Michael Pittman sees an absolutely obscene volume of those RPO first read looks. And that's enough to kind of buoy and warrant him having fantasy upside. I still believe Anthony Richardson is a phenomenal athlete, is a phenomenal quarterback processor. I think if you watch his ability to manipulate the pocket, to avoid pressure, to avoid sacks, and also make the right read, he is absolutely there as a quarterback. The problem is that his accuracy seems to come and go. And it's not one of these where he's got an obvious mechanical flaw. He doesn't set his feet, so his accuracy doesn't. It's literally Josh Allen 2.0 in terms of Josh Allen had a slight kink in his arm that he ironed out and his accuracy went through the roof. I kind of feel like Anthony Richardson, yeah, he's got a bit of a kink, but if Anthony Richardson can improve his accuracy like Josh Allen did, watch out because this guy's going to be phenomenal. But if you look at the reports of the joint practice with the Bengals, where it basically sounds like the Bengals defense were laughing on the field because he was missing wide open guys and stuff like that. Like, that's really scary and alarming. So I like Michael Pittman. I think the volume of RPO heavy looks he is going to get is going to be enough to kind of incubate his fantasy production this year. Do I think he's got massive upside? Do I think he's got massive potential? Not really. I think he's going to be in that, solid, boring Keenan Allen, obviously a bit better than Keenan Allen, where you're probably starting him every week, but you don't feel great about it. I also think that, look, Josh Downs seemed to make the leap early in preseason. He's got a high ankle sprain, which they're always brutal. They always linger. They always, end up destroying people for longer than perhaps they should have. But he seemed to have a phenomenal connection with Anthony Richardson early. We know that he can get open very quickly on those underneath routes. And my concern is that if they've got Josh Downs who can get open at will quickly, are we going to start to see him take away some of that RPO first look stuff, which is what's carrying Michael Pittman's value? So I'm nervous, and I think that the price doesn't warrant the risk, but also the potential upside. So for me, I'm a little bit nervous at cost. I'll absolutely take him if he falls below his ADP and stuff like that. But in the range he's going, there's other guys that I feel more confident about taking.
Okay, I'm pleased with that though, because I have quite a lot of Josh Downs stock in my dynasty teams from when he was drafted, hasn't really done anything, and I haven't had the heart to let him go yet. So happy days on one end, but sad about Pittman on the other. Rich, do you have any winners and losers from preseason that I haven't mentioned that you want to talk about?
Well, I think we can cover it off quickly, but Cole Kmet is the biggest loser. I think this is a guy that was potentially being talked as a fringe top 12 tight end in redraft, in dynasty, wherever you wanted to talk about. And he might not be the tight end one on his team right now. You know, Shane Waldron's best mate, Gerald Everett, seems to come across, seems to be taking all the snaps away, was the most targeted player in the Bears offense in the first preseason game. And I just think that Cole Kmet isn't startable. Unless it's a 2 tight end league, I don't think, and you're looking at your tight end roster and you're starting Cole Kmet, I think you need to go out and find options, because I'm seriously concerned there. Another loser, it hurts me to do this, but Tank Dell not playing any 2 wide receiver sets is very alarming. I think hopefully the Texans just play shed loads of 11 personnel and he gets to be on the field a lot. But I'm a huge Tank Dell believer. I think he's one of the best pure separators in the league. And I was super high on him coming into this year and being the wide receiver 1 on that offense, despite sharing a wide receiver room with Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins. But now him coming off the field in 2 wide receiver sets means he could potentially be like a 65-70% snap guy, which scares everything out of me. So yeah, he's a faller. I wouldn't be too alarmed, but he's someone that's fallen down for me. I'm just scrolling through. I think Carson Steele, you know, the fact that he's come in and it seems taken over the running back 2 spot in Kansas City. He was kind of one of my priority undrafted free agents to watch in my rookie guide. So quite pleased that he's carved out a role and looks like he could be fantasy relevant this year. You know, if Isaiah Pacheco gets any sort of injury, and we know with the way his running style and the way he plays, that's a potential. Carson Steele could be phenomenal if he gets some work. Xavier Worthy in that same offense, I think the way they're scheming him up already in the preseason is super exciting. You know, the knock on him was the physical side of the game, his ability to beat press coverage, his ability to, you know, beat physical corners. Well, Andy Reid showed in the preseason they're basically not going to let him be kind of pressed at all. We're going to motion him. We're going to use him out of the slot and stack bunches and things like that so that he gets a free release every time. Well, there's not many corners in the league that are going to be able to run with him, whether that be on crossing routes or deep downfield. So yeah, I'm really excited about Xavier Worthy. I think that's probably the main guys. Who else am I worried about? Keon Coleman, I think sneaky potential winner. Didn't have a great preseason in terms of raw stats, but the fact that he's basically run 100% of plays with the first team offense, someone's got to catch passes in Buffalo, and the fact that they're almost forcing him into this wide receiver 1 role, I'm really excited about the potential there. So, yeah,
they drafted him for a reason, didn't they, Keon Coleman? He's the low-key, quiet guy that has had basically no hype, and he should have been one of the most hyped-up people, because when teams go out and draft somebody, it's usually for, like, when they draft somebody for a reason as opposed to BPA, then there is a game plan. And like you said, we've seen it with Smoke Worthy, that they're just going to basically release him from the smoke everywhere so no one can catch him. And when you've got potentially one of the strongest arm quarterbacks in Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball, that's dangerous. And I think Keon Coleman can be dangerous with Josh Allen, but we just haven't seen it.
And we know year in, year out, those rookie wide receivers are league winners in terms of how they produce down the second half of the season, how they outproduce their ADP. Look, it's been talked to death over the past few years. Well, the problem is that the rookie wide receivers right now are being so highly valued that they need to be superstars to pay off their ADP. You know, Marvin Harrison's a first-round pick on Underdog right now. Malik Nabers is going in the second round. You know, Xavier Worthy's up in the 4th, 5th rounds. Like, these rookie wide receivers are being so hyped up and overdrafted to the point where they need to be stars to warrant the price you're paying. Keon Coleman's not in that ballpark yet. He's still undervalued, and he's the kind of guy that nobody's talking about right now. but could absolutely be a league winner in that second half of your season.
Xavier Worthy's still available in that draft. If he comes back, I'm going Bo Nick, Xavier Worthy.
That's an absolute smash. Xavier Worthy going behind Rashie Rice is interesting.
Well, isn't he just... Now I've said that, they're both going to go, and it's going to be a huge disappointing moment.
You just got to hope that nobody's listening live.
Yeah, there's people listening. I can see them. I can see everybody listening. Thanks for tuning in. Rich, one more Dynasty question before I go. I've got a late first-round pick next year. I know it's late because my team is going to slay this year. I do need a running back. Who can I target with a late first-round pick, running back-wise? I'm quite happy to give it up for next year if I win it this year. So I'm all in on a late first-round running back. Who can I target?
So I feel, first of all, like you're trying to trigger me because I bang the table every single time I talk about it. We never project first-round picks until after week 4 of the season because anything can happen.
No, I want to... What pick I'm going to have?
Yeah, I have this thing where I refuse to project any picks until we get to week 4 because, you could wake up tomorrow and I don't know how loaded your team is, but you get 5 guys that break their legs and all of a sudden it's an early first round pick and you've valued it as a late and you screwed yourself over. So I get really nervous projecting, particularly before the season's even started.
Yeah, but I fully understand that, but I've manifested myself into this point of the season that I'm going to win it. And the good thing is I have 3 first rounds next year, and the other ones are likely to be early. So I'm not too worried about my 5 leg breaks at this point. So let's say I do have a playoff-bound semi-final team, top 4 first-round pick. Who can I go and target with that pick?
So what I do in these situations is I've obviously got my survival kit. I got my trade values in there, so I pull it out and I basically go over to the running back position and I just start at the top and I work my way down and I just go Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jamar Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey. Nobody's giving me any of those players for that late first. I'm probably just going to offend someone if I go and send that trade, so I won't bother with those 4. But then I will probably ask the question on all of these next tier. So I'll go Jonathan Taylor. I'll ask the question that probably gets rejected.
That's a hard no. Read that.
Corin Williams, Devon A-Chain, Travis Etienne, Saquon Barkley. They all probably get rejected as well. Okay, but now we're in the tier where this might get a conversation starter. So I'm going Isaiah Pacheco, Ramondre Stevenson, James Cook, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker. That's kind of like maybe I could get that done. Maybe I've got to add like a 3rd or something like that to get that done. And then we're in the tier of every single one of these should in theory get accepted. And I'm going Rachaad White, Jonathan Brooks, Tony Pollard, Brian Robinson, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Zach Moss. And that's my list. And anything less than that, I'm not paying a first for.
Okay, there's a couple of names there I might be able to tickle.
I think the guys that I'm higher than consensus on that I think you can go and get for that first round pick are Tony Pollard, Brian Robinson, and Joe Mixon. I think all 3 for whatever reason are undervalued right now. I think Brian Robinson's like one of my favorite picks in any format this year. We talked about Tony Pollard earlier. I think Joe Mixon, he's probably not going to do you for 3-4 years down the line, but the way the Texans have restructured his contract, he's going to be the starting back there for this year and next year. And that's going to be a good offense. We know Joe Mixon is not the sexiest, not the most appealing player, but he just churns stuff out. So if you can get Joe Mixon for 2 years for a late first, he'll pay off his value. So those would be the 3 that I'd feel confident you're in the right ballpark of value and are probably likely to be accepted.
Well, the good news is I already own Brian Robinson.
That's awesome.
So he isn't a concern.
The other question I want to throw at you, Stocks, and this is something that I think doesn't get talked about enough when we're talking about buying and selling players. First of all, does your league have a trade deadline?
Yes.
Okay, that's worrying. But
well, I tell you what to do, Rich. Bring that up with Pitsy because it's his league, and I've told him ever since I joined, get rid of it.
Sort it out. That's not good enough. But my thing is, do you think you can make the playoffs without paying that first for that running back?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So why pay that first now?
Because
Why not wait 6 to 8 weeks? You'll know there'll be injuries that will happen. You might suddenly, Brian Robinson might be the RB1 and you don't need the running back. There might be, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard all get injured and you've paid a first for one of them and you're sitting there without your first and without the running back that you're telling that's going to win you the league. If you wait 6 to 8 weeks and you can get to a point where you're a playoff contender at that point, because you're not trying to win the league now, you're just trying to make the playoffs. Can you then spend that first to go and get the running back that can push you over the top? At that point in the season, there will also probably be 3 or 4 teams that are out of contention and are looking to sell off running backs and aging veterans, and therefore the overall price of those running backs drops.
I will counter your question with a question, Rich. This is a heavy running back route. The running back scoring is heavily weighted to running backs being important. You also start 3 running backs, which makes
I know. I've spoken with Pitsy about this league before, so I think I know the league you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. The scoring is insane. But anyway, my starting running backs are currently Devon Achane, Josh Jacobs, and Brian Robinson. And then my bench is Ezekiel Elliott, Justice Hill, J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Pierre Strong.
Okay. I don't think you need to go out and pay a first for running back right now, because Pierre Strong could be the starting running back in Cleveland. We just don't, we're talking about Jerome Ford, but Jerome Ford was pretty bad last year. Pierre Strong could easily win that job. Zeke is Zeke, and yeah, he's old, but he could be a workhorse in Dallas. And there was another guy in there that you've just said that whose names have completely escaped me. The second or third guy off your bench.
J.K. Dobbins, Justice Hill.
J.K. Dobbins, okay, he's had the Achilles, he's had the ACL, but this is a guy who's, when he's been on an NFL field, has been phenomenal. We know the Chargers are going to run the ball. At the moment, he seems healthy. He's talking as if he's healthy. J.K. Dobbins could be that RB1, RB2 type that you're looking for, and he's just sat there on your bench for free. So if it was me, I would probably hold off trading for that running back until you know where you are in 4 to 6 weeks.
Perfect. Okay. I will heed your advice. I don't know why I got West Country there. That was weird. I will heed your advice and I will wait. And in 4 to 6 weeks, I'll let you know how it's gone.
I look forward to hearing that.
Rich, thank you so much for jumping on today. It's been an absolute pleasure to reconnect and do this again. Why don't you let everybody know, who's listening or watching, where they can find you, the Sanctuary, all about you, because it's been a while since you've been on.
Yeah, no, thank you ever so much for the invite. I'm, always delighted to get the invite and always very keen to jump on whenever I can, because really appreciate everything you and Murph did for me when I was starting out in this world, and love to come on and chat with you guys. So yeah, you can find me. I'm at Dynasty Islands on Twitter, on X, whatever we're calling it these days. Most of my work is done on the Fantasy Sanctuary, so we're at the FF Sanctuary on Twitter and YouTube. Just past 3,000 subscribers, which is absolutely wild. But we do largely video content, and redraft, DFS, best ball, dynasty. We're gonna have 4 shows a week in season. I'll do a buy sells on Monday. Me and Tom are going to do a matchups focus show, and then we've got Tom doing some DFS, and we've got some Tyler doing some underdog specific stuff. Come and jump in. It's good fun. We've got a membership there, and it's just a fun community that we're hopefully creating over there.
Super duper. That sounds fantastic. Again, thanks for coming back on, Rich. Rich, we're going to have to organise another round of golf because that was fun. It's been a long, long time. And I played once this year and I played well, so now I've got the bug for it. I think we should organise something for, if not this year, definitely next, the start of the next golfing season.
Absolutely. Well, I've played once and I played absolutely horrendously. I only went out with 6 balls, lost them by the 16th, and carried my bag through the last 2 holes. So sounds like I can only play better than that. Or the last time we played, where I think I didn't find a fairway until about hole 10. So the only way is up, I guess, as they used to say.
Absolutely. Rich, enjoy the season. I hope it all goes well for you fantasy-wise. I'm sure we'll speak soon. Rush Nation, that's going to do it for today's show. As always, don't forget, keep rushing.